So, what really makes a place feel haunted? Is it just one creepy story? Or is it something more? Today, we're going to dissect the anatomy of a haunting, looking at one of India's most notorious paranormal hotspots, Daw Hill. We're going to explore how folklore, the environment, and a really dark history can collide to create, well, a perfect storm of fear.
Okay, let's dive right in. High up in the Darjeeling district, there's a town called Kurseong. Now, in the local Lepcha language, that name means the land of white orchids. It sounds absolutely idyllic, right? Like some beautiful secret garden hidden away in the mountains.
But that beautiful name, it hides a much darker reputation. If you ask around, the conversation quickly shifts from flowers to fear. The very same misty, quiet atmosphere that makes Kurseong so stunning is the exact same thing that feeds its terrifying legends. And look, this isn't just some local campfire tale. Daw Hill, a specific spot within Kurseong, has earned this chilling reputation. It's a place where the stories are so persistent and so, frankly, terrifying that it's seen as a genuine hotspot for supernatural encounters. So, what is really going on up there in those misty hills? First things first, we have to look at the folklore. To even begin to understand Daw Hill's reputation, you have to start with the stories, the legends that have turned this scenic hill station into a landscape of pure fear. The most famous legend, and probably the most unsettling, is centered on this one specific stretch of road. It winds between the Daw Hill Forest Office and the Old Victoria Boys' School, and the locals, they call it Death Road. And this is the story that really put Daw Hill on the map. Woodcutters and locals consistently report seeing a young boy who is headless. They say he just emerges from the mist, walks along the road for a bit, and then vanishes back into the woods. But here's the part that gets you. The legend claims that if this apparition follows you, the encounter can literally drive you to madness. Now, the fear isn't just out there on the road. It seeps inside the walls of the institutions themselves, places that were designed by the British Empire not just to educate, but to control. The Victoria Boys' School, a sprawling colonial-era relic, is seen as another major epicenter of all this activity. And when you lay it all out, you see it's not just one ghost story. It's like a whole ecosystem of fear. You've got the headless boy on the road, these strange auditory hauntings inside the school, and this overwhelming feeling of being watched or hunted in the forest. It's almost like we're looking at a case file for a supernatural investigation. You know, this detail is what makes the school haunting so incredibly creepy. These reports of footsteps echoing down long, empty hallways, of whispers when no one's there, they happen most often during the winter break. That's when the school is completely deserted, locked up tight for months. It's as if the heavy, enforced silence of the school year finally lifts, and the building itself starts to exhale the memories it was forced to hold in. These stories are terrifying, there's no doubt about it. But the real question, the one we need to answer is, why Daw Hill? What is it about this specific place that makes it such fertile ground for these legends to take root and just grow? It has to be more than just the ghosts, right? It's about the place itself. So, next up, let's look at the environment. Because in the story of Daw Hill, the landscape isn't just a pretty backdrop. No, it's an active character in this drama, one that seems almost perfectly engineered to create a sense of deep unease. Kurseong sits at an altitude of about 1,500 meters. That's nearly 5,000 feet. Now, that specific elevation is absolutely critical. It's the perfect spot where the warm, humid air rising up from the plains smacks into the cold mountain currents, creating an almost permanent state of thick, chilling fog. And what you get is this: a natural stage for fear. The constant fog, the dense pine forests that swallow up sound and light, it creates this state of permanent twilight. It's a kind of sensory deprivation, where your visibility can drop to less than 10 meters. It's so easy for your mind to start playing tricks on you. A shadow becomes a figure. The wind in the pines becomes a whisper. But there's another layer to this mystery, one that goes way beyond fog and forests. See, the ghosts of Daw Hill, they aren't unique. In fact, they're part of a much larger, much more widespread pattern of hauntings all across the region. This pattern is so distinct, it actually has a name: colonial hauntology. It's this idea that so many ghost stories are actually the manifestations of historical trauma, tied directly to the British Raj.
The stories cling to these colonial-era buildings, places like schools designed for control, administrative centers, and grand old houses. They're like the spectral residue of a past built on power and oppression.
And once you know what to look for, you start seeing it absolutely everywhere. Downhill isn't an island. It's part of a whole spectral archipelago of colonial-era hauntings that stretches from the Himalayas all the way down to the city of Kolkata.
For instance, you have the National Library in Kolkata. It used to be the residence of the Governor General. Even today, people who work there report feeling the presence of Lady Metcalfe, who was famously, almost manically, obsessed with keeping the books in perfect order.
Or you have the Writers' Building, which was the administrative nerve center of the entire empire. After dark, guards have been known to refuse to patrol certain hallways because they claim to hear screams echoing from empty rooms, the spectral voices of those who suffered under colonial rule.
And then there's Morgan House in Kalimpong, just a short drive from Kurseong. It's now a hotel, but guests report hearing the faint clicking of high-heeled shoes walking the halls, said to be the restless spirit of Lady Morgan, who died there under tragic circumstances. You see, the pattern is undeniable. So what's the big takeaway here? We've looked at the stories, we've looked at the environment, and we've looked at the history. How does it all fit together to create a place as profoundly haunted as Doll Hill? Well, it's this powerful convergence of these three distinct things. You start with the chilling folklore of a headless boy. Then you place that story in a perpetually foggy twilight forest that puts all your senses on high alert. And you set that whole stage in a location that is steeped in the complex, often traumatic, history of the colonial era. Each element just amplifies the others, creating that perfect storm of fear we talked about. So here's the bottom line. The ghosts of Dow Hill might be more than just spirits. They are the living embodiment of cultural memory. They represent the anxieties of a colonial past, given a terrifying form by a landscape that practically breathes shadows and secrets. That headless boy isn't just some random apparition. He's the ghost of a history, and maybe of all the children whose own stories were silenced inside those institutional walls. And that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The next time you hear a strange story about an old building or a lonely road in your own town, maybe it's more than just a ghost story. Maybe, just maybe, it's a piece of forgotten history, waiting in the shadows for someone to finally listen.